At the beginning of each retreat one, there is always a moment we call frameworks. And that's an opportunity for the cohort leader to provide the frameworks out of which the cohort experience will happen. That's why we call it frameworks. It's really the theological frameworks that set the groundwork for what happens in a cohort. In a little bit, I'm going to give you an example of the elements of a frameworks talk that could be there. But I want you to hold the reality that we want each cohort leader to make this personal and as authentic to themselves as possible. The elements of the framework talk are important, so include some of those elements. They are about union with God, or relationship with God, and why community is so important, and why our participation in mission is so important. Those things are critical, and why our practices that we're going to engage through the course of the next year or so are all centered around those frameworks of union with God, community, and mission. But try to make it as personal as possible. Make it you. If there's a particular passage of scripture, you can take it out of there. The next morning, we talk about those frameworks out of Mark chapter 3, 13 and 14. So don't go there. But these frameworks are everywhere in Scripture. And so feel the freedom to include your way of thinking about this and inviting people into the process. The goal is not to create a memorable theological frame that will carry with them throughout the time. I'm often surprised at how much people remember from the frameworks, but it's not the critical component. It's not the make or break thing. One thing to remember too is that in the frameworks talk, it's usually right at the beginning where people are entering in, and especially if it's in the evening, they're tired. And I've never done a frameworks talk in the evening where people are tired, where somebody didn't seem to check out. So keep it noticing that this is an important talk, but God has the freedom and the capacity to fill in the gaps along the way. And that's one of the reasons we return to it the next day or the next morning out of Mark chapter 3. As you enter into this frameworks talk, you'll see an outline provided that you can use or not use. I will provide you an example of the frameworks talk that I give, a very pared down short version of it so you can fill it out as God leads you. But remember, this is to provide them the structure of where they're headed theologically, what we're going to do and why we do those things, and the content and the process of engaging the cohort. Make it yourself. Be authentic to you. Feel free to include your stories.